this session, I'm going to briefly explain about animating things in the Unity engine. There are different ways that you can animate a game object in the Unity. For example, you can use a sprite sheet, you can use rigging, or you can, for example, bring the parts of your character and then trying to individually manipulate the transform or other attributes of that game object. But for this tutorial, as it is for beginner, I try to explain it in the beginner friendly, and then later in our projects we use more advanced things. And I think that it is a very exciting journey because alongside that, we're going to use the Photoshop too. So please open your Photoshop or any similar softwares because we're going to paint our first thing in that. You can use ready models, but it's a good practice that first you try to make things from your own. Okay, let's open the previous project that we were working on that. And let me move that to here. So we have our pictures in another folder. Pictures. Okay. So there are different ways to animate. As I told you, one of them is using the sprite sheet. For example, you have different frames of one animating thing, and then you try to, for example, you put them behind each other and then one animation is going to appear. So yes, I know that is very hard to understand what I'm talking about, so let's go and see it in action. So open your Photoshop. So you can go to File, New. It's better that you select the pixel, and for the width and height, it's better that it come from a number 8. For example, 8 multiplied by 2 is 16. 16 multiplied by 2 is 32. 32 multiplied by 2 is 64. And like that. So they will be multiplied by 2. And for example, if we have 128 multiplied by 2, we have this number. So that's why I've selected this. So that is a number that the graphic cards work with that. So when you have this, and you can choose your own number. I just give you an example and make a custom one, and then you have it. You can use the zoom. We want that, or the thing that we try to make here, they should have a specific start and an end. And the boundaries, they should have a special one because the animation system works in a way that it's tried to, for example, show this frame and then this frame and then this frame and then this frame. So for example, if your model move to this position, then your animation would be very ugly. But yeah, you can change the shape for another frames. That's how the animation is created. But you should be aware that where it starts so that it wouldn't be something that is not weird. So that's why we need to be very precise. That's why I brought this ruler and this grid line. And how to bring that? Maybe we don't have that. So you go to Edit, Preferences, and then go to Units and Ruler and make them pixels. Then go to Guide, Grid, and Slices. And then here, for example, you want that each section or chunk be 64. For example, I have 64, 64, 64, and 64 inches. I have 4 of them. So each chunk would be 64. Then you say that. Okay. And also there's subdivision, which is not very important. I just want this. And then you choose the color. For example, mine is black. And so I want to see it appear like this. but it's something that you decide. Then press OK. Maybe you didn't see anything. For example, you see something like this, so you don't have those numbers. So press Control R so that they appear. Or maybe you don't have these lines. Then go to View, Show, Grid. Okay, for example, at first it is like this, and you go to Show, Grid, and then they appear. And I also don't need this one. I just need this one because I want that my animation consists of just four pictures. So you can use this uh, crop tool. So if it is not selected, make sure that you long press and then choose the crop tool and bring it here. And then you can start, wait a minute, because the recorder is here. So let me make, create a new layer and start um, making your shape. I just want to make it very simple because this is not a Photoshop tutorial. I just want to make a simple fire. So go to this pen tool and you can, for example, choose the third one and press, for example, click, left click, and then choose the next spot, left click, and then here, 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 something like this, something that is very similar like a fire, which this is not, but let's make things very simple. And then you can go to this convert point tool and make them, change the shape if you want. Something just like that. And then, for example, I want to give it a red color, but you see that it's not working like that. The way that I do that might be different from the others, but from layer, I go to path and select the dots. That is called the load path as is selectable. And then I pour the color. Oh, the color is very bad. Maybe this is better. Okay. And then Control D to deselect that. And then you can, for example, make another layer and you can paint the inner part of the fire. I say it's not important, it's not the art class. I just want that you get familiar with that. And you have this, then you can choose another one to give you this. Okay, so imagine that it is the first part of your fire picture. Then you can create a new layer and then continue that again. So look at your subdivision. It is the first. I don't know that is visible for you or not, but I have four subdivisions. I have, yes, this is section 1, 2, 3, 4, but inside that I also have other sections. For example, 1, 2, 3. So the base of my fire starts from here. So here I also start, but I make a slight changes to the fire so that when the picture comes, as a sequel, then it's like something that is moving. Deselect and then and then this. Okay, now I have this. Then I go to path and select the third one. And yes, again, I have that, a new layer. I just want you that make it distinguishable from the previous one so that when you're animating, you see the difference. We don't want to create something nice here because this is not very nice, but okay, that's fine. And we also do that for the other parts as well. Okay, now we have that. I said that it's better that they are in the separate layers, so when you want to move that, you can do that. Okay, and I think they are good, and they are somehow started from middle of this section. So I have this. Now I want to save that. I go to export. If you want to make it, for example, you want to keep the quality, but you want to reduce the size, you can use this option. Otherwise, you have, for example, you can say save as PNG, but this is also good. But be aware that you select PNG 24. It's only not around 9 kilobytes. And then save it somewhere and call it fire. And then bring that into your project. For example, just drag and drop here. Drag and drop from your desktop or whatever that is. You have this here. Later, I will tell you how to set the PPU here, but right now you don't need to be worried about that. Filter mode, always put that into point so that there are no changes in the color. And you have the sprite editor. Okay, you have this. At first, this is not a single sprite because it consists of 4 pictures. So a sprite mode, put it into multiple, right? And then go to sprite editor. Say apply. Then this window would be open for you. Go to slice, grid by cell size. Here it was 64 if you look at the ruler, or you can bring the selection tool and do something like this. This is 64. Let me do this again. By 64. Okay. So you say, okay, for the X, cut to 64, 64, 64. And for Y also, that's because that is a cube, that is a square, of course they have the same size. And then say a slice, then click on apply. Then you see that they are chunked. Just close that and open it. You see that we have 4 sprites. Okay. Yes, this one, the spreadsheet is the same, but it consists of 4 one. So now we want to create their animation. One way is that you grab each of them, press Control 1, press Control, all of them, grab them here, drag them into your scene view, and then this window appear to you, and say fire. And if you go here, you see that these are ready, but it's better that you create another folder for animation, and take both of them here. Now, the first elements of that picture is here. And it has Animator too. And if you go here, you see that it shows the animation. And there are some things that you can set up. For example, click on these dots and you say, okay, I don't want that they appear by second. I want them to appear by frames. Frame 0, frame 1, frame 2, 3. For frame 0, you have this. For frame 1, you have this. For frame 2, this. And for frame 3, you have this. Okay? And when it finishes, it start again. And it depends on something that I show you later, because sometimes the animation ends and nothing happens. But right now it loops. An animation consists of the animation clip and the controller. In the approach that I showed you, you don't need to be worried about where to place that. Okay, because for example, you might say, okay, I just want to add the animator, which already has that one. But imagine that this one. You have the, oh no. You give it a components, animator, and you should give this a controller, which is this, a square shape one, and you give that. But it has to be specific to this object. So there are two approaches that you can add. But the easiest one is that you drag and drop your pictures, select them, and then automatically, not only it would create the animator, but also it gives a controller. So you don't need to be worried about anything else. So now you have that animation. And if you go to animation, if you don't have this tab open, you can go to window, you can go to animation. We also need animator. We also go to here. You see that? Okay. This is a default animation clip that will be played. And it is selected on the loop time. It means that when it finishes, it will loop again. So yeah, you have this beautiful fire here. For example, the fire is, let me, what was this order? It is 1. Make it 1 so that it would appear behind the floor. Okay, so you have that. There was one way that you're working with the sprite sheet. Now we want that we change things directly. We don't want to go to Photoshop and do things. We just want directly manipulate the player, for example. Okay, let me close this. Imagine that this player, that this player has this and this. I want that the player, for example, it has the idle animation that it would be breathing, it would shrink, and then it expands, it change colors. I just want to do this here. I don't want to go to Photoshop and do that. So you have the player and add components. Well, here you add the animator and then go to your animation and say create a folder called player. And here create a controller, animator controller. Well, so you have this player and you have this. You can give it a name, but right now it's not important. So now you have this. And also your player has an animation. Another simple approach is that, okay, remove this. Come here and say, select it, go to animation tab and say create. And then go to animation and call player here. For example, idle. Now it again has animator and also the controller. If you click on that, it will show you. So that would be much easier than if you try to manually give it that. Okay. So now I want for the idle animation that my player, for example, um, scale and shrinks. It's a good practice that you make a parent object, for example, player holder. Because if you change the size, change the transform of the player in that way, if the animation is played again and then it's returned to the original place that you have set that. But you want, for example, here it shows the animation and here it also shows the animation. And I don't want that it return to the position, So it's a very good practice that you have a holder that doesn't have anything and then give the player that has the animation and other components. So it just acts as a holder. So So any changes would be related. So if I change the position, it will be related to the holder. Okay. So with idle, if I want to record an animation, I would say press this and then it is ready and I can do whatever that I want. At first frame, I have to set the initial uh, values. It's good practice that at your zero frame, you set the initial values. For example, yes, this. Just move it a little bit so that it knows that you triggered something. Then I want that in frame 30. It means half a second, whichever that you're comfortable with. I want that it, for example, it shrinks and goes a little bit down. And then here it returns normal. You can select this, Control C and Control, and go to this frame. So I copied this and here, I put it here. So then if I play that, it would be something like this, like the player is in the idle position and it's breathing. So it gives more life to my game. Well, okay. And then I don't want to give, for example, to tell you how, for example, running animation, because this is not suitable to show that. But in the project, in the real project that we are working, I will explain that in detail. Right now, I just want to add another clip for hurt. For example, if the player is hurt, what kind of animation it will show? I say, okay, record, and then I want to change this. So each of these values can be changed. It's just important that you open that. For example, even you can change the size of the box glider. But for now, I just want to change the color. So at frame zero, I just say, okay, whatever the color you had before. And then I want that if you're hurt, You change color to red, and then it gradually transitions between these two colors, and it takes only half second. Okay, so I showed you two ways that you can animate different elements in your game. First one was using the sprite sheet, for example, for running. For anything, you can use this, or you can directly change the parameters in the um, animation tab and play with different parameters. And there's also the third way, that is rigging, which is another way, but yes, you can, for example, rig a player that it gives a skeleton that, for example, raises a sword and something like that. You can use that, but as it is a little bit tricky, as sometimes um, uh, the skeleton might be reset. So I don't myself usually don't use that, but I use these only two approaches that I told you for the 2D environment. And for the 3D, that is completely different. The concept is the same. You have to know the keyframes and so on. I will tell you later in that related course.